Hello, America. The FBI, they were with an ad today. They've had an ad on for a while. They have call FBI is my new smile. Call the FBI. It says if for hate crimes. See, they're doing this for sequence shifts. The FBI recorded themselves involved with wire crimes. For example, with NBC Connecticut News, they attached me to fake emails. So those are email crimes simultaneously. And they did that to force hid what I recorded actually, not realizing too. I'm not trying to record the police, they recorded themselves. Not trying to record the courts, they recorded themselves. Not trying to record Facebook, they recorded themselves through the police that work for them, retired and standing. And like it's not just Facebook. It's nothing. In other words, it's from their campuses too. It's each age of campus, I caught them doing something with, needing to hide live progressions, remote uses of them, pretending to be against what they'd already further. Because their involvements, for example, that which is against sickly, distinctly against each member of the human species volume, and then further distinctly against each American, and then further distinctly against people of each state. Each location, area, and state difference is being and having been employed since before our founding parents were even born, since before colonists have any type of recorded too, still self-valued criminally foreign influence database relationships. That was and is known. But rather than see, those are one of the things that are known true always, not denying any exceptions, not valuing exceptions denied. And that's relevant because exceptions in exception nature are that identity that is native pure, that our souls want to long to say, they want to long to fight for, that our native rights. See, but natives aren't going to agree on because it's not really care for the human species identity of volume. So it's not really care for what is native pure. See, our syntax nature was converted. And the syntax nature of the nations that spilled over here. We're in a semi-ancient trap that knew it tricked, hurt, forced, persuaded, took as ours countries A through Z, individually grouped and together, needed to counter the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal insidiousness, natures wrongdoing, wrongdoers. Needed to counter that. I'm not a lawyer, not a police form, not a criminal, not a journalist. See, journalists also, NBC Connecticut News, then they pretend too, sequence shifting, that it's personal when we bring this up. And they're lying about passions and emotions because the passions and emotions have a function by what is simultaneous. And the FBI has been consolidating subjects to hide where they've been using the subjects criminally. They've been roles distinctly individually grouped and together with other police forms of the executive branch, individually grouped and as methods too, where and how every time they've been doing that, increasingly since founding. So nothing got better, and all exceptions in exception nature were arranged by that breaching method that knew everyone wanted out of the all natures of slavery. And so it knew that it would have to keep them thinking things are getting better. They would have to keep them defending treatments of what people call integrity as non-integrity, and then wanting to have debates about that by leaving out what is simultaneously actually recorded. So New York, for example, New York City never had a voice speak for it. That with every part they're trying to tell correctly, they just attach people to fake words. And that is left out before they have the phenomena that leads up to whoever gets to the microphone, regardless of who it is. And it's not going to happen properly unless we secure our rights at locations online. So people have been the networks have been tricked, hurt, forced, persuaded by the breaching method and by the our own stewards, interbranch, all exceptions, the exception nature tied to them. And that's including our opinions. See, they pretend passions and emotions about democracy because everyone stays collusion at locations, areas, and states. Uses of where and how they have an identity theft, fraud, slander method. That, for example, when someone makes opinions or convictions relative to what Jim Crow laws were about, what slavery is about, what the actual positive or negative qualities of a locations is about. See, that's relative to the breaching method. That was slavery was with simultaneously a torture method. And our founding parents, America's wanted and needed us. They left us means actually recorded. I have to say actually recorded because people are self-valuing where and how they measured and maintained who would try to be behind the revolution, who would try to be behind that which could eventually develop into a unity that they couldn't control remotely, not just from the countries and as the countries that had possession of the colonies, but because that was with and through hundreds of countries sharing families. They demonstrated themselves here and there how they share each other on and off the campuses. And they have people like longtime friends. And see, they're inheriting up needs to hide sequence shifts, finite, active, and progressive lies for our own being and having been maintained through all kinds of cases from their positions, even with things that have nothing to do with people. All investigations, investigators, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and that insidiousness to people's fact treatment nature styles, people's treatments of their opinions and convictions that they're all only defending qualities of fact treatment nature that can't defend themselves and afford told properly American history and told timely. So rather than just going forward with teaching about how criminal insidiousness was criminal insidiousness natures and as identities of the ground were propagated. Only the extent of that is debatable. And everyone was obligated by nature and by our founders and by the Native Americans, first, by nature first, by Native Americans second, that distinctly healthy group that was and is still being and having been, forced to become the identity and entertain the identity that it can't defend and afford the means to liberate the identity, the grounds, identity of relationship to itself and the value of that and uses of the value of that as a science that is native pure, using where and how the sciences share an identity differentially, increasingly. And the increasingly part is only one perfectly that makes it and keeps it not differentially, increasingly. So it's important increasingly where and how the invisible, but still discernible, has a conjunction to it that is the hyper invisible, that which the syntax nature the answers to the questions about where and how languages came about, where and how English grammar works, how they must be treated, how must be explained. So the FBI is associated, for example, with countering the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. But see, they've never had the integrity as any modern countries A through Z. Their identities of syntax nature as the law treatment natures. The nature of the law has only been spoken about through, for example, the bar itself. Campuses of each age and nature have conjunctions that everyone missed because they are syntax oriented. And it works the same way a circuit works with electricity functional too. That identity of circuit having a discernible identity and relevant to the locations where mapped locations can be and generated identities of locations. They can be given positive or negative, just like our correlations is shown positive or negative. And so, for example, too, the predicate act of the law, only the extent of it is debatable. It was revealed, named the predicate. See, but English was revealed. It is most probably and most practical, is more probable and is more practical to convict. English was revealed in ancient times before sciences became criminally foreign influenced. So they had a sophistication by and as the stewards of the syntax of the nature of the law, of the quality of our human fact treatment nature. Note distinctly at each age of it, because that was and is part of what speaks to us. But now it's through systems other. So now where value is being used other too, because that is dysfunctional to where there is an actual nature of hyperfunction as the hyper invisible but still discernible. That identity of volume as value as nature / nature as value. That is a conjunction to all parts of English grammar, individually grouped and together. Its identity of relationship to itself is also increasingly valued distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. And which is also, and the value of that. Again, we're speaking about the hyper invisible but still discernible, and the science of how to discern it, which is a science about the simultaneous. It's the hyper simultaneous identity of value progression that is both space and existence, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. It is the value of a slash between that. The slash, the solidus, SOLIDUS. There are other names for it. I have to do a video on that. I learned that from reading Wikipedia.com. So it's not an insignificant thing where and how the FBI has been pretending to be against hate crimes. See, they've been self-valuing the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature since founding, like with the January 6th treatments. They can't defend their treatments of the nature of the law. For example, per the sequence treatments, their sequence shifts show that they are incapable. They show how it's what's actually recorded is how they've been in interbranch locations. They've been self-valuing roles with all kinds of methods and means to stack fabricated audio and video transcripts, totally made up, attaching people to fake ties to each other, fake natures of ties to each other, which is an increasingly problem. And they're increasingly building and having built the appearance of other motivations, which are real other motivations, but specifically to maintain that increasingly self-value, used to hide roles with exceptions with that. For example, this person has been practicing their timetables or something like that, so we're going to put them in this class, and we're going to put this person in this class. They've been since founding inter campuses of each age and natures, juxtaposing things off the record with where and how they've been timing people. There were men and women I didn't know the names of, and there were ones I did, who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed their roles as interbranch families and exception nature tied to them. So I found this all through time, more and more the connections between it. Per how, for example, it's where and how you can't treat it properly in any country if you don't bring up where and how both the countries individually grouped shared on and off the campuses. These are campuses that have conjunctions to training there and all kinds of, in other words, on the records and off the records, where that is known and unknown, that is juxtaposed with layers of other unknown and unknown, layers of roles, of uses, of positive, negative treatments that leave out the method that kept and keeps effectively people from grammar schools and kindergartens and people next to those schools kept with their family members, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive lies, natures of identity theft, frauds, and slanders, instances, roles, as illusions roles, with overt criminal enterprises, private one, and the interbranch and the exception natures tied to them, not by accident. Since founding, they've been painting arrays and pretending because a whole bunch of people believe something that it's true. But they've and while doing so, they've been maintenance to those natures of premises treatments, those of qualities of fact treatment nature, of aspects of fact treatment nature that are being and having been employed by the breaching method that did not let our founding parents have free speech because they had everyone having been sustained entertaining speech that if they didn't entertain it, they were hurt, tricked, forced, persuaded to wish they had. And that had been the way it had been in England regarding its relativity to Connecticut between New York and Boston, having been on paper the possession of England. Again, that was specifically so we to part of what measured and maintained. Everybody only capable of forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to blame England, leaving out how the same breaching method employed here against Native Americans sustained, then against them juxtaposed with the colonists sustained, and uses of that entrenched below more as more finite and per reasons beyond greater than those identities of sophistication that could become manifest at all locations, areas, and states. So identities of industries, identities of locations, identities of value nature streams themselves, value progression streams themselves. In other words, we're in the pathology since North and South had slavery. It was breaching method employed that was left out, where people describe how and why really the North went to fight against slavery. That was forced by the only method left to defend themselves, that the counter extortion of the North. and of the self, non-distinctly, enabled. Our founding parents enabled this while they were having to hide their roles and speak what couldn't be entertained and what they wanted us to entertain, which is the Constitution unabridged. A quality of fact cheaping nature. If they put someone in jail because they spoke up against slavery, from the jail, that person themselves would be able to, or in the court before that, or if even the court is criminally foreign influence, as that shows, they would have to criminally foreign influence notes, so they have to have a syntax nature that can counter predicate acts to organize as fact cheaping natures. That's how governments know the predicate and the subject, their identity slash s, I is identities of relationship slash s to themselves. So identity for IES. So identity slash IES of relationship slash s to themselves. The predicate and the subject in all things as complete identities of volume. There are semi-nature relationships to the hyper-simultaneous. Offensively, people need to pretend things about opinions and convictions of others. The FBI is also with all countries individually grouped in together with physical delusions and with all kinds of medicines racketeering and not just evidence is racketeering, federal rules of evidence is racketeering, wire crime acts and methods roles. It's with other police forms too and their family members and interbranch. This is a breaching method that exploited everyone since they were the youngest age, speaking through others. Relevant for now, this is the part that you have to be mature to handle. This method knew that every individual would have the longing to describe that which is discernible intellectually as correlation nature is actually inherent, active, and progressive means. Where and how people speak for America and it being positive and or it being free. Where and how there are so many manifest demonstrations of how real science and real passions, emotions never spoke, and real honesty never spoke for America or any modern country. These are not our means. Proofs of it. Actual science honestly knows that the suburbs, since before slavery, since before our founding parents were even born, the houses, the infrastructure means to it, they had already been designed. No bigger was allowed to even be spoken about. It was part of that torture method that again is additional to the slavery of everyone, sickly distinctly against everyone. Effectively, not just to keep how sickly non-distinctly from being screened while increasingly not capable of being discerned anyway, but to keep remote uses of that. And then of uses of that and of natures of that shown needs means to hide it. Like pretending it's just, blaming colonization. A truth used to lie as a self, too. Blaming other things, others, or selves. Oh, my schools never. I'm not educated. They're blaming on individuals. They're measuring and blaming on individuals, our own, distinctly from the breaching method. The real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures at all locations, formal, informal, meaning interbranch, private tied to them. That includes the exceptions, the exception nature. So there are three branches of government as three sequence natures slash simultaneous sequence slash simultaneous natures, individually grouped and together bound. I'll gather around. So World Trade Center attack. They also attached me and others who were in the Ninth Circuit Court, which is right next to where the World Trade Center towers were, right before the attack. They attached me and others to fake words about that, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people, individually grouped and together with a whole bunch of ties and influences and roles and uses of the roles of the World Trade Center, with their conjunctions to people at CCSU, who are also in conjunction with uses of that intercities on and off campuses of each age and nature. These are child campuses. This is a method that knew and knows that humanity has means to see how to discern the breaching method with our correlation, relevant to where and how things, where they bring up black and white. That was employed by the breaching method. Where and how people blame it on white and with passions and emotions, that is also recorded being and having been used to keep all the uses of that by the breaching method and through our own. So then through other motivations, natures, needs, interests, styles of fact treatment nature, styles of fact treatments, styles of fact treatment aspects and nature qualities that can't defend themselves and afford the protraction of anyone using short words with revelations. Like, for example, so the FBI has been enrolls also. There's an ILO's home services. I don't know if they're involved with the ILO, Joe ILO, but there was a Joe ILO, and his sister did unnatural things per how they have roles with courts and with the FBI and other police agencies and private police who have been slandering people offensively because of their roles with locations next to campuses criminally foreign influence, with their roles with identity thefts, frauds, and slanders that are relevant also to relevant falsified police reports, relevant depositions used criminally foreign influenced and through criminal foreign influence of juxtaposed natures, because this is all. So we can't separate the corruption at locations. Russ Allen, I am being watched. Thank you, Russ. So the FBI replaces what is actually recorded, and then they use the crime method of pretending they don't see, because the interbranch locations originally still that when they get caught for things, which they constantly get in other countries, they do too, but they torture each other because they have our kids share here and there. Americans' kids go to other countries' campuses, and those other countries come here. So people from Weathersfield were involved with judges and prosecutors when I was a kid, pretending they know me, and they were trying to set up exceptions too. They were involved with timing where I was going to be, because they were lying about my nature of relationship to the other kids in the databases, and they were lying about the nature of relationship between everyone. Because they have remote possession of the fake integrity of the fact treatment natures and the fact treatment nature qualities of the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and those as criminally legalized, interbranch and exception nature and exceptions tied to them, where and how we inherit that, still with the breaching method entrenched. So, and had to unfold where and how our founders knew how they had slavery entrenched north and south. And this is with psychology and psychiatry juxtaposed at medical locations. So they had all places where we would have positive and negative, consciously maintained, re-engineered to criminal insidiousness natures of positive and overt criminal insidiousness negatives juxtaposed, specifically to maintain the causes of it, which would be increasingly all locations know, increasingly as identities that would have to value the names at all locations, individually grouped as strangers, offensively hurt, or being and having been hurt. They will have to increasingly value that and how the sciences are now in a bridge state /s of themselves as that bound by and as what is native pure, continuing to demonstrate negative value, nature, progressions, action, natures, and demonstration of it being and having been abridged. And so as the Constitution is abridged, so its campus, republic, it speaks not by itself alone, but through us, vaccines. So there is also, they've been using corners of streets for roles with fact, treatment, nature-oriented predicate acts in suburbs across the globe of nations, countries, territories, islands undiscovered. No, I'm just kidding. I wonder, imagine if there was an undiscovered island that I'm going to forget. So the Constitution is about being unabridged. It's not about what statute, what amendment, but the exception nature have to be with the quality of fact, human nature. To understand this country, you have to understand those freedom of speech as and a quality of fact, human nature. That the language of the Constitution originally was forbidden, still is forbidden, because there is complete remote possession over countries individually grouped in together. For example, that's only relevant to one of the criminal foreign influences, and one of the ways they are shown means and needs to hide it. The Wethersfield interbranch, intercities. So Wethersfield interbranch families, through speaking, everyone speaking through others. They have roles with falsified police reports since I was a kid, dozens of them. They even, including, they stack like 6 of them or whatever narratives with the same arrest, switching arresting officer. You will examine this. Like a guy with a first day, individually grouped and together, they have methods. The executive branch, the political branch, and the judicial branch. Methods that are the complete possession of the sophistication that was here before them, never relented while being there for sophistication. And is more finite than their sophistication, is greater than their sophistication. So they have the FBI involved with pretending theater is legitimate integrity as theater, pretending that the FBI could and would look out for us. In other words, Wethersfield police also have wire crimes through time. They've been having kids and their families go in and make falsified police reports after they influenced people to be around others, and they brought up those subjects. So there is a pattern between people that made confessions to me, confessions as statements that aren't questions, and I didn't respond to them. And there were uses of that, because that's part of the identity theft fraud rules and people involved with the names, intercities criminally involved. And I'm trying to say, like, for example, if you make an opinion that's wrong, about slavery, something the breaching method put up, you're criminally involved, no matter who you are. See, they want us to have crime. They want passions and emotions, people that are dishonest and simultaneously delusions raw, criminally foreign influenced. They self-value any means and needs to hide that, including pretending to be against. Um, and they have to hide pretending to be against desecration of the names that sacrifice themselves, their bodies and minds and time to people in the backgrounds with remote possession of their nature, criminally foreign influence denying it right through wars. The investigators of the World Trade Center attack consciously had and have roles with a whole bunch of juxtaposed natures of organized crime with the attacking countries, and they hid it by using, for example, they've been putting medical databases. No one looks into it. There are foreign and domestic medical families I caught recorded on and off my street through people tied to them, involved with drugs with the Wethersfield police, and untimely deaths and uses of that time through time on and off Trinity College, even if made up, and especially differentially too, which is also evidence. See, we need to use a quality of fact-cheating nature that has also countered how the FBI offensively have been preventing police reports because of their agents individually grouped and together with involvements with this. There's a Detective Dillon or used to be a Detective Dillon with some kind of police forms with a Dillon family. And there's a guy who used to be his partner, who's one of the ones involved with medical racketeering that has been through time on and off campuses connected behind people's backs. And now they've been putting people fake communications with doctors at campuses. They've been putting the patients that actually communicate with doctors, they've been using them to hide the lipoaggressions and the roles and with the uses of their roles with various natures of courts, personally, professionally, criminally involved with them, and with their patients and criminals since before they got caught, per their roles with the identity theft slash slander method. The breaching method would continue to be manifest increasingly as a means, invisible but still discernible, for someone like me and someone like you, Americans. Human species identity of volume to help meeting each other out, enforce mandated law outside of courts. So the news media has been slandering people. I just found out yesterday too. It is confirmed. I didn't know before, but in other words, the corner of South Steen Highway and Town Line Drive. It was a bunch of ways involved with the people and the names involved with the World Trade Center attack through their roles with investigators, and with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and militaries, foreign and domestic, and collusion on and off our campuses, and with uses of confessions and state in the form of statements, and in the uses of remote uses of people's motivations. I'm not asking about debatable things, or if someone wants to debate something, I'm only asking that, in other words, that happened. See, now they can't afford where and how. They're also involved on off the state judicial branch offices with people associated with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso. People with the name Fianza recorded, confessed, demonstrated as strangers to me all these confessions about their roles with the state judicial branch offices and with houses next to it. There are other people that non-verbally recorded, demonstrated, confirmed this. Also, digital crimes with their own that use their own kids, and they use other people's kids. including with a principal upskirt nature, involved with the people on and off the state judicial branch offices, on and off New Britain Superior Court. Also, New Britain Superior Court has been using their Facebook page with the Wethersfield Police Facebook page. These are also people personally tied to leaderships of Facebook. Then they pretend it's personal too. So they've been using the hate crimes narratives because they've been pretending passion and emotions at locations relative with people that timed where I was going to be in the past, so they could lie about the natures of relationship to me. So they could lie about sequence relationships that show that, and how they have been fabricating evidences at locations offensively relevant to where and how the youngest kid could discern using the value. See, it is value that nature will show negative value, nature progressions, acts, and natures, and demonstration of of a system or a nature of order that furthers slavery. It will show that. Nature will show that. They demonstrate it. That's positive. You can't help but nature try to make more positive everywhere it is. That's also positive unto itself. We could try other, but that effort, that strain, they made it self-valued because a breaching method employed other than natural, to use again all locations. Then further to use locations as agreed to be used that we know about historically and now. Abridged. The suburbs were designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, let alone what they knew they would people stack. They already had perfected, everyone blaming what the breaching method caused and causes increasingly on other things. People blame it on others and people blame it on themselves, even when they're blaming the correct things like colonization. So we have to do it as that quality of fact, cheap nature that can counter criminal insidiousness that has been using the arrays of opinions. Still, delusions raw too, relevant to where they and how they do. People that never had communications with themselves. They make the illusion pretending other. So there's a Chet Casper. I don't know his father's name. There's a father of a Chet Casper and his mother and sister, and they're involved with the intelligence community and the military, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, with a former Mayor Gold, and with people with the buildings next to the state capitol, and with tremendous police and a Domain family on and off the state, the Wethersfield Police Department. And these are people also with medical locations, Hartford Hospital, involved with foreign and domestic families through time, all along Wells Road, with identity theft, fraud, slander, falsified police reports roles, and relevant to their roles with Houses on My Street, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by the police, involved with them switching names, fabricating police reports, sequence shifting, lying about their passions, emotions, because they can't put it on paper. So they switch names into brands because if they relevant to where and how they've been. The FBI has these wire crime methods still recorded where they're pretending to be against hate crimes because they're needed to sequence shift. Once they get people locked into judicial process or with the police, they fabricate audio and video into databases every day. They attach people to fake words, fake ties to other people, fake natures and ties to other people. Multi-front with the news media too. Don't forget, NBC Connecticut News attach me to fake words with themselves. They attach others with fake words with themselves. They attach me and little kids to fake ties to doctors. And they did that to force doctors I recorded with police and people with the courts and their kids involved with sexual abuse and with the military police kids involved with sexual abuses and medical abuses, even medicines abuses, and with their physical delusions simultaneously, and with their relativity to where and how they have people that live next to the schools involved with identity thefts and frauds with the schools. And that was also brought up by the syntax of the roles and names involved with NBC Connecticut News, WFSB, and WTNH, and Fox Connecticut News, with predicate acts and other news and their family members. Before they were with journalism, they were involved with offensive evidence reception racketeering as qualities of fact cheaping nature that would then want and need to pretend sensibilities of themselves legitimate. Where and how I have to use their names now because they sought me out to pretend to know me. All exceptions and exception nature and demonstration of the same thing. Vaccine. So the campuses, that theater, that speech for you guys, New York City. If you ever hear me, take the time to listen because with what I'm trying to tell you, I'm gonna force them to reveal what everyone wants revealed are actually inherent active progressive means. The actual care, like a virtual father and mother, that we could only be together. In other words, and the father needs to yell. But you guys want the FBI forces us to call them names because they, for example, they online because they have roles with uses of locations where they've been like there's a Joshua Stryker who's also involved with some judges and prosecutors with the FBI on off Trinity College with deans who also have roles with how we have foreign and domestic, and they're playing games. They told lies to a president of the campus, President Sweeney. Please tell them to say sorry to Elizabeth too and to her parents, and please get me a response for is that the Dean Alford, and why did they switch his names and the timing of it on Facebook? Because he's also recorded, fast demonstrated, confirmed on off campus involved with some people who got involved with some untimely deaths. One was a murder, though, reported. And reportedly, even if it was made up, these are people involved with abuses of kids and the counters to it in collusion with it, including people that work for DCF and involved with the people that work for the prisons, kept needing to hide the same sequence shift, find active progressive lies with various natures of courts and former director of the FBI, also criminally involved with uses of their locations like Hartford courts, that also having offered to host my father giving a deposition of the former director of the FBI. I had caught that court without telling my father to not complicate his case. And plus, you can't record the police in the courts. I didn't know it was connected. I didn't know that about that at the time. So a number of people intercities colluded with Hartford courts through time and with New Britain Superior Court and Middletown courts. They have juxtaposed roles with a whole bunch of natures of abuses of children and elderly, and the own encounters to the things they could only report. Oh, we'll report this problem. Okay? And they measure and torture. For example, this is like the modern version of the cracker as a certain type of victim predator, where and how logic can pretend with passions and emotions that science has spoken for space treatments. For example, with the hospitals. For example, with infrastructure. For example, relevant to, see, they make what's complicated, and they say things like names. They say, oh, it's about money. And then they measure and maintain for their own reasons, distinctly from the breaching method, measuring and maintaining their treatments of money. incapable of defending themselves and of affording, they're actually capable of being inherent, active, and progressive means of kids at the youngest age. And where and how increasingly relevant is where and how the FBI and the CIA and the judicial branch and the executive branch, his families, demonstrate, confess, record, and confirm simultaneously with overt criminal enterprises, private ones juxtaposed with our schools too now, and with our locations. That and how they are kept needing to hide the same sequence of final act of progressive lies, offensive identity theft, fraud, slander rules, and needs to pretend it was only part of their made up and completely made up motivations. Because people need to speak. Everyone's a liar. Where and how it can be used for evidence. There's people stacking in New York City. We can see from the YouTube videos that look at New York City from afar. We could see from but there was a theater that is valuing that having been so long and so entrenched. That increasingly, in other words, like this, especially 50 states working together, especially if we're doing it, working with the countries, working with their states, with the same plan and the same means and method. We use the hyper invisible, but still discernible. Wants and needs, for example, those locations, areas, and states across the globe most tactically denatured by the pseudoscience and collusion with the everyone A through Z. We're on value nature systems other than the natural one. So we have to have a voice that could speak for the law rather than blame. Could speak for the law on time, timely as the nature timely. That means outside of court. Because the courts are recorded offensively, pretending, we're just trying to make an example. No one's following their example. Oh, they don't even realize. People don't watch the news. When they watch, they're going to watch, all these. We have to have a hyper news too. That's one of the things we're going to put in place with the New York game. But we have to do what's simultaneous. We have to do the America game. And we have to do what's simultaneous, the world game. And in other words, the countries that have nuclear weapons have impositions that are relevant to that can be turned into positives that not a criminal and seriousness nature is a positive. There's a way to turn them into hyper positive, that which is positive, but it's also positive onto itself. The identity of simultaneous nature, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that increasingly conjunction, singular to all parts of English grammar as their value, as all parts individually grouped and together, just like the sound, the notes of music. They are all individually grouped and together, a semi-nature relationship to that hyper simultaneous, that which is generating more forever nature per and as its complete possession, its particular identity of complete possession over an extent of, as the extent of space/existence's greatest part. /S. Control your hearts. Its parts are pure. Boxing is sure. Boxing's the science of sharing identity. This is before the World Trade Center attack, campuses and other industries and the interbranch locations. They've been involved also remote uses of boxing gyms over the sense and sensibilities of the stewards of the kids at each age of factory nature, over the stewards of the elderly, over the identities that are all feed or fake, involved with identity theft, frauds, and slanders, again, where the motivations at locations are being employed, where they can pretend things about the motivations of others. Courts have been approving fake things with juries since founding, pounding drums. Courts have been letting things go away because one reason, because they've been making subject treatments sickly, while simultaneously making criminal insidiousness natures treatment sickly, relevant to the predicate acts delivery system method, most critical. And it is a fact treatment nature oriented one, but that one being having been extended. So there are a whole bunch of people I don't know at all, and people that went out of their way to pretend other with a Judge Smith when I was a kid, and now with a Judge Killian, and there's some doctors tied to him, and to a Brendan Leahy. Before that, Brendan Leahy had no. I never had a conversation with him or his father ever. These are doctors with Hartford Hospital of mental health, ones associated with badges, and with prosecutors and judges personally criminally involved with them, of other names I don't know, and a Brian Silver. And there are neighbors of his also I don't know that are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a Tim O'Brien, who's been involved with them with fabricating audio and video in cases, and with wire crime rolls with the media, and people on this child sex offender registry further then and now, also per how they had women involved with the child abuses, interbranch and private tied to them, and with their narratives when they speak about democracy, because they have both political narratives like the Fox News and CNN pretending that, and MSNBC pretending that they're legitimately, thinking too, that they're legitimately speaking for Republicans or for Democrats or following something that, in other words, these are people that came through campuses sickly, distinctly, criminally foreign influenced to keep how sickly non-distinctly from being discerned. Because to keep how, so not one has learned that and how there is an identity the scientists share and is increasingly valued and that is increasingly relevant. So there are increasingly people in New York City and through cities throughout the country, people in suburbs throughout the country that want and need to speak about uses of the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and identity theft, frauds, and slanders at all locations, including with the media. It is also because of how they have the locations next to every place, including body dumping spot of a serial killer, real or made up, especially differentially, which is also evidence near Central Connecticut State University at the West Hartford, New Britain. These are also people involved with the child abuses, with spots next to campuses. Eric Burgess is one of the people that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed to me as a stranger. All exception, nature, demonstration of the same thing. In other words, roles having been with courts, judges, and prosecutors, and people with the military police that are criminally foreign influenced, that had him lie. So they use people like the intelligence people have people tell lies to girls behind other people's backs to pretend for their own motivations, even when they're looking stupid. It makes them look stupid because it lends credibility to illusions they were needing and pretending relevant. They're pretending they have relevant means and needs to hide behind how they've been criminally foreign influenced with other countries. In other words, they're pretending they're not. And they're offensively pretending they don't discern the evidence. They are knowing to an extent, but only relevant to what they can admit. Because they've been roles with all kinds of cases. They've been roles with the uses of the corners of streets, the routes. This is for the identity theft, fraud, slander method. Again, that becomes increasingly value where and how the slander parts are effectively used to keep that which is native pure, that function by the hyper invisible, from being used syntactically, correlatively. That requires us using how it is invisible, but still discernible 1/3 of itself, 1/3 of the three increasing together as value. That's how you could still discern it. Hyper invisible, but still discernible. Its in value is only increasing. The value of how we are a value/value progression, for example, the value of our quality of diffusion, where and how it could be. People could make positive and negative treatments that are both criminal insidiousness natures in collusion against identities, against sequence truth. See the revelations that come with sequence. Told as a quality of fact-keeping nature that also presents what is actually recorded as that and how they've been roles using everything formal and informal. They've been using even their patients and criminals as means to hide all the from and hurt no one to say anything about it, just attach anything, everyone to fake words. See how they exploit exceptions and exception nature as at the branches interbranch. We cannot address this properly if we don't address where and how they've been using the other countries involved here, like Russia, like Korea's. The identity of every country is present here because our human identity of volume as it is actually bound is here. The identity of how it is breaching method being and having been bound is also here. And uses of the value of it is also here. Because the breaching method is one thing self-valued, individually grouped and together, everyone at every country, A through Z. All locations, areas, and states are criminally foreign influenced. The method knew that everyone would have to counter things about that as fact-keeping nature. And it knew it could effectively did get them to do it, to blame things on people exactly the way it wanted and needed, using criminally foreign influence premises treatment, sequence treatments. Simultaneous. The value means to speak about what is simultaneously true. In other words, they've been using time simultaneously too fast in courts, simultaneously too slow in courts each day as police forms. So the police have roles with gun crimes, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, distinctly from the judicial branch. So they distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously need to hurt people based on what people say, positive or negative, online. Because they've been in background uses of people's names. Oh, I know that person. Oh, he's a fighter. He boxes. Oh, Anthony Wall. I know him. They know me for what? Harvard investigators recorded since before the World Trade Center attack involved with predicate acts, involved with New Britain Superior Court switching names, forging names, involved with a pattern of confessions requests for help to me. These are also people, a whole bunch of people tied to the New Britain Superior Court who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed how they make women judges self-value roles with sexual and medical abuses of little boys and girls, including digital, relevant to where and how they've been pretending theater, juxtaposed with delusions, and there's been remote uses of it. But it's also worse because it started where and how I caught, like, for example, in the school year 1993/1994, a John Maiano, who had been friends with one of my neighbors that the police recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, is involved with them with some wire crimes, switching names, and with the Wethersfield Police Department, with some falsified police reports with a whole bunch of people tied to them too, since I was a kid. They also have their extended family members involved further with some World Trade Center attack, further natures of things tied to the actual World Trade Center attack, relevant predicate acts like the wire crimes associated with the FBI. Also with their games with this, with their narratives pretending to be against hate crimes because they have to hide sequence shifts and pretend passions and emotions. You know, they have to pretend they're trying to discipline people legitimately because they need to hide sequence shift. They need to hide what's from and hurt out from being demonstrated to people's mean correlation is actually inherent active progressive means, what's actually recorded. They've been sicker than their most patients, their worst patients and criminals. They've been fake, they've been involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and delusions raw. And they switched names into branch so they could keep using courts they've already been using for years to stack fabricated audio and video, categorically in collusion with their roles fabricating audio and video into campuses' databases, categorically timed collusion with them stacking instances, roles, criminally foreign influenced at locations. That's what's actually recorded, because there's also remote uses of that leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context. And since the same ones leading from the World Trade Center attack, leading up to various Connecticut cases and other interstate cases, and since they've had criminal collusion with that, a whole bunch of other countries, and the same people involved with predicate acts on and off CCSU, on and off Trinity College. The FBI is criminally with other police forms and courts, pretending they don't see recorded because they've been fabricating audio and video. It's recorded. Follow mandated law. New York City, let's get someone with integrity on here and who's not too scared to get me a response. Get a name for the interbranch families too, because they brought up all these people from the past. I don't know. All exceptions demonstration. All exceptions are in demonstration of the same thing. So it's a pattern of people that went out of their way to make statements and confessions to me, even time. And there is a recorded how they make uses of illusion. Of arrays for illusions where they have the arrays being and having been employed to hide where and how themselves they are employed criminally foreign influenced. Delusions raw. Again, relative to where and how there are revelations from where and how our soul does not want and did not want entertained from the youngest grades. The fact-cheaping nature-oriented justifications of what is overtly criminally foreign influence and delusions wrought, speaking for identity/IES. So you're going to speak for black and white with delusions still, and you're going to switch names and forge names into branch. You need to pretend your passions and emotions about your motivations, and that's also simultaneously evidences. So they've been hiding this from Judge Napolitano to the FBI and the interbranch criminally involved with overt criminal enterprises with the areas too. Brought, like, for example, confessed on Facebook and then confirmed on Facebook, because they get the people to do things they don't want to do. Enzo Faenza, and I forgot his cousin's name. Enzo Faenza and his cousins recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they're involved on 2 Route Highway with their neighbors with identity thefts and frauds against me, sequence shifts, and falsified police reports with people on off the state judicial branch offices and with the name um, Dylan. A whole bunch of people tied to a former detective Dylan and his family involved with some untimely deaths and their roles with uses of investigations of investigators and the interbranch families with the drugs and medicines and with other countries with the drugs and medicines roles with themselves as police forms that are also with overt criminal enterprises actually and private ones and just uses of that insidiousness that is only let be propagated where and how they are offensively preventing each individual from demonstrating about the revelations about how can be discerned the Native American rights simultaneously, sickly distinctly from what they call black rights, sickly distinctly from every difference prevented rights is prevented non-distinct prevented uses of the revelation per all the ways is recorded sickly non-distinctly. Everyone is being and having been hurt by this. Like the environment. No one wants the environment to get bad. No one needs to have to make it hard on us to fix the environment. That makes it paradise everywhere. You have to fix it. Honesty, fact nature toward the ground's identity of relationship to itself and the value of that. We have to you know do things to change the nature of infrastructure and means to it. We have to realize the ground has been tactically denatured per a breaching method that has completely nothing to do with the ground's fact nature oriented, but nature demonstrates the use by the ground distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously as our value, while and how we are fact nature, and while and how it is greater than and more finite than that, while as that value. So to discern it, so to keep it discernible for us manifest. I tell it best, vaccines, America. Please, YouTube. Please, YouTubers. Someone get me a response. Get me a name. You understand? They tell people to pretend they don't understand what others say, per the FBI's roles with the wire crime methods, plural. The breaching method is we're going to treat as a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise. Someone needs to speak for where and how. Also recorded is how um, private lawyers are criminally foreign influenced, and with the locations next to the news media with these games. They have wire crime acts methods with the broadcast and with their phones. So just do what's right. WFSB and timely. Fox Connecticut News and WTNH. Fix those lies and illusions and delusions and roles with what was going on at the time with the principal child abuser and the other people involved with the digital crimes, sexual, medical, even medicines crimes in the locations, in the policing of the locations where with pharmacists, etc. Also relevant to where sense and sensibilities is a phrase. Also relevant to where and how interbranches inclusion with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, preventing sense and sensibilities of actual integrity at all locations necessary. So there was also a Abate. There is an Abate family I don't know, and there's a Dominic Abate, who's also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the intelligence community, slandering me, fabricating me. I mean, identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, falsified police reports, rolls, other natures of federal crimes with people at the corner of Silestein Highway and Town Line Drive and all along Route 3 as that which goes by the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices. So there are places at its source that are also involved with as state police and the other police forms involved with you guys criminally, FBI. But this is speaking to you, American citizens. But you guys have this being hid from you. You have maintained your opinions and convictions and reactions relevant to the abuses of you from the youngest ages. So you could be maintained as sense and sensibilities, for example, use Jane Austen's phrase, that cannot afford mandated law followed at any location, because that requires uses of short words and revelations that are also not sequence shifting, not criminal insidious natures of positive and negative treatments, and capable of being protracted upon and being, in other words, followed by unity. So unities, only criminal insidious natures of unities were allowed to be manifest through our and as our own manifest things every modern country, because this keeps the breaching method increasingly self-valued by those individual grouped into together things. And the breaching method wasn't already effectively having been sustained at all locations, even against Native Americans. Greetings, everybody. This is how we can fix the world. We use this method. Because what is actually recorded is where and how the locations, areas, and states of each modern country they are making the same mistake /S. And we all have the means to discern this. And there is the phenomena of being and having been additional means that have not been used, and to discern how that was self-valued, obfuscated by our own here and there. So, for example, there are Russian. There's a woman who said she's from Russia. Who I never had a conversation with her. Just polite, never made opinions, convictions about anything to her. With Hartford Hospital. So Russians have something to do with some fire departments. There's also a Tom Peruta. I don't know his brother's name. I think his name is John Peruta. He says that there are Russians also involved with this. And there are houses near them involved with the corner of the street of Griswold Street and Route 3 that the FBI is involved with other agencies and with there's a woman on next to a campus in Hartford. There's a Scalora family involved with some people at the World Trade Center with the FBI, CIA, and with cousins of theirs, or as I said, there were theirs, Joe DeMauro, with one who's involved with the name Collusion, with the confessions of the rest of the police, then and now involved with the principal sex offenders campus. And the other methods of child abuses he and others were involved with simultaneously at the campus. They also confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed that they used a Pierce family. I had nothing to, I don't know the Pierce woman. I don't know the name of the guy tied to her. But there's a guy tied to her, this young man tied to her, who said, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. You see, they were involved with foreign and domestic doctors with medicines crimes on off the town offices also. And through time, they also have like probation officers and parole officers and people associated with that, with also relevant to various killings connected through time, like tied to the one confirmed with confessions tied to the state judicial branch offices, and this Dillon guy, who's also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed since when I was a kid. But then in 2011, shortly after my father's death, he non-verbally confirmed the verb rolls further with his past non-verbal confirmations and a whole bunch of confessions and recorded abuses of kids he had roles with in the past, with judges too, fabricating audio and video, slandering people, identity thefts and frauds. These are also people on and off the state, on and off the community center. One of the people, Ray Colon and Joe DeMoro, lied to a Napolitano, not Judge Napolitano. Um, they've been lying to Judge Napolitano too. That's relevant. Sequence shifting, delaying, uses of their Facebook pages for digital crimes with the kids. Self-valued roles that the retired and standing interbranch associated with Facebook and with the policing of of all the companies. So then they want and need people to pretend that's personal. It's not personal. It's not legitimate algorithms, receptions of ourselves. Because we have moderators in the background discrediting people as the FBI, as the same ones that were involved with these narratives with themselves, with like. So there's an ILO Home Services who's also one of the ones recorded and confessed and demonstrated involved. I never saw him near the corner of Town Line Drive and Southstein Highway, but they're also involved all along Route 3 with locations, intercities through time. Relevant to they tried to make exceptions to say, pretend they know me in the past. I never saw Joe Aiello. All exceptions are I went to his father who got my hair cut sometimes when I was a kid, because I had gone when I was a kid. See, when there are federal criminals who were co-defendants of the former director of the FBI in a 2006 district court case, who also were involved with their family members with identity theft, fraud, slanders, falsified police reports, wire crimes, federal crimes with drugs, medicines, physical delusions, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, on off campuses connected in the past. For example, foreign and domestic countries have uses of phrases like conspiracy theories. They pretend people make conspiracy theories. They're increasingly offensively fabricating audio and video into databases, valuing that being and having done before you have problems with yourselves in New York City, before you have unities that are the same thing. You guys are blaming other things other than ourselves. What keeps you forsaken? What keeps the space locations we have throughout the country not being accessed, even if we only have to access them temporary? To bring reliefs to the nature of what we could actually afford to do and to what we could actually visualize doing and or actually realize doing, rather, per the unfathomable. Per the fathomable means by the actual identity of the ground's identity of relationship to itself that is actually capable of having through us humanity. So we need to address where and how passions and emotions have been separated from their function. For example, and proofs of this is where and how the FBI's roles self-valued, pretending other, but self-valued, preventing mandated law at all locations offensively. They had obligations to demonstrate the predicate acts delivery system method and the slavery method / torture method / identity theft / slander / fraud method that slavery is involved with. Those obligations were replaced with them needing to pretend that their uses of themselves pertaining to be integrity was worthwhile. So they have to increasingly self-value, nonsense as their narrative. Follow mandated law for them. So former director of the FBI is also involved with the January 6th Commission, hiding what I caught them recorded doing with MSNBC, Fox Connecticut News, and CNN with their coverage of court, uses of Congress. I also tried to tell both parties, presidents and people that represent them, I even tried to tell Speaker Pelosi about the corner of Southstein and Town Line Drive. I just found out too it was tied to a curve. And there's an officer, Jerry Miller, who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Kerr family further involved with digital crimes and on my street. And as people also who were involved with confessions tied to my neighbors in the past, as people that were involved with predicate acts on campuses I went to, from behind my back, identity theft, fraud, slanders, pretended ties to me and their friends. And they made exceptions to make it look like other after their friends graduated. The ones tied to the 2.5 Weathersfield police on my next on the street over from me, with various houses. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They lied to me about and colluded and forced a collusion with them. Forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, even if some self-valued. I know since they were kids, they were child abused by this. So I forgive them. But in other words, I'm not forgiving acts. I want to have the acts addressed, though. If you can't do that, how could I forgive people? And you guys have been sequence shifting about why and how I had to raise my voice and have them call the police relevant to this. That got me, into more conversations with people I caught over here. Then 3 times further, trying to pretend that conversations with me formally too. See, these medical places tied to the courts, and those courts and their family members have been kept needing to hide lie progressions by valuing roles with offensive evidence reception racketeering. So they have a whole bunch of Weathersfield police, and they used past cases, legal cases, private. They have a suit. And simultaneously they have investigations of investigations of investigators in collusion with it. They have remote uses of the F.B.I. You think that anyone spoke for the predicate acts upon New York City? Where how we know slavery was still entrenched north and south when the Civil War began. That we know then and now they value obfuscated how our founding parents wanted to speak about how they had the force to defend themselves, the North, that they would have to use the narrative of pretending to be against slavery while they were first and are still entrenched roles with it and delusions wrought. So we'll examine 1822. Reportedly was when the Institute of Living was founded on the campus of Hartford Hospital, which is one of the places with psychology, involved with all kinds of corruption with the agencies. Ones who are doctors of psychology who have badges and guns, who are delusions raw. And they have a whole bunch of other countries involved with these rackets. They also have to hide that originally and still by increasingly needing to hide lie progressions at locations like near where they have different things of different sensibilities, different sensitivities, relativities to the police forms too, like where they have drugs, legal drugs. See, but these people are still in collusion with their patients and criminals. Hi, Crystal Sampson. How are you? So this video is about how we have means to reveal evolution's fruits and gifts, and it means out of nowhere, right here before us. But they have been prevented. We have been prevented the protraction of short words and their revelations, like for and how. In other words, like how New York City It was designed by a breaching method to cause negative value nature progressions, acts of natures. Like, for example, how slavery rules were forced by a breaching method north and south, and how our founding parents had to force the North and South to fight with each other about it. But in other words, while still being entrenched with it and wanting to need and needing to hide and to value roles with it while pretending other for the breaching method, screening it. So slavery stayed in the North right up to the last battle of the Revolutionary War, because George Washington had to come to Wethersfield, Connecticut, for example, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. He could only counter-extort that which was entrenched north and south with slavery. And he could not leave proper record of that relevant to other things. We had to leave that record separately, and then we had to find that out later. Because we were supposed to tell about how those are proofs that show where and how it was being used remotely, where and how nobody had free speech, but everyone was forced to pretend other. Everyone was forced to make criminal insidious natures of positive treatments increasingly self-valued. Native Americans against Native Americans. Self-value collusion with the overt criminal insidiousness negative. So, and then colonists against colonists, sickly distinctly to keep out, sickly non-distinctly. The colonists and the Native Americans and the early Americans and us now. We're still in this trap. Hello, everybody. So boxing's, of course, long lost boxing, the science of sharing identity. See my new smile. Yeah, I just lost my tooth. I never knew how to smile. I used to think you have to go like this. So I have like my face doesn't smile because some people have beautiful smiles. Me, but now it's like a little bit funny. So at least I have. So nature takes something away, gives something else. Boxings for themselves. So I started talking about online. I started speaking about Santa Claus. Then I see all these. I see different. Every once in a while, I see flashing, and then real quick, someone using that concept in a cartoon for Christmas. I didn't see what the name of it or what it was, but in other words, I'm saying it for a real reason. See, there's energy. And the value when you add that E to the clause, to Santa's last name, Claus without the E becomes Claus. Now a clause is a predicate, like a verb clause. A verb clause is a main verb, and it's related words in a sentence. But it can stand as a complete a clause can stand as a complete sentence. It's nature's identity of volume, where value is nature / nature is value. That is positive onto itself. So it can be. It is also can be left as a complete sentence. One could add more to it, but it has the elements to stand as a complete sentence and be grammatically complete, which is relevant to where and how correlation nature is reading from 1/3/5 distinct identities of invisible / hyper invisible identities of correlation nature. But increasingly, we are not using the actually interactive and progressive means this way. So many pray, but not unfolds. But the same. It only feels like game this way, vaccines. science of sharing identity. This identity that, for example, this is why the predicate is of value to English grammar, while simultaneously it is named the predicate act, that which is value to the law needing to counter criminal insidiousness. For example, to counter criminal insidiousness as a fact treatment nature, even if it's not formally, one needs to counter. In other words, even if it's not as someone who's a police or a judge, we still need to be able to defend ourselves with free speech at locations. From the news media too, with the interbranch, we can't allow them to keep attaching us to fake words and locations, fake ties to other people. That's increasingly them needing to self-value collusion with all kinds of things on locations they don't know, but they do to an extent, more and more. So they value those exceptions, not realized by other people too. We have remotely used our locations, areas, states. I've been asking for a long time to have a response. I can't remember the police use that and how they've been like the FBI has been also simultaneously phishing, trying to get people to call them up to complain about hate crimes because they've been needing to hide how they've been roles fabricating audio and video with the other branches and with other police forms. That's what I caught. They're pretending they don't see the evidence. That's why they can't give a name and they've been switching names. That's part of the evidences. They know once they try to speak about what's in databases that they wrote down, they'll be revealed. So they've been hiding this from Judge Napolitano. And I don't know the girl, Napolitano, and there's another girl who was her friend that was that I don't know, they were like a couple, a Joe DeMoro and a girl named Napolitano near the community center of Connecticut, of Weathersfield, in the past. That was one of that was one of the except they made exceptions to pretend they made an exception specifically so they could pretend that they know me. And so they could attach us to fake words, fake ties to each other with people, men and women along Route 3 have something to do with the abuses of little boys and girls from my town, like how they involved those girls. I don't know her friend's name. I don't know her name. Napolitano, I forgot her first name. So they have something to do with people that work for the prisons in the interbranch as the ones that are criminally foreign influenced, roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And it's nothing personal. That was a nice girl. They got pulled into this, which got brought up by the police with these games with the names over the phone, with them pretending hate crimes, with them pretending, because these are people I caught with New Britain Superior Court, Hartford courts, at locations crimes that show they've been crime natures every day in cases. They've been lying about their passions and emotions there. They've been influencing people more and more at locations. These are the same people involved with the names interstate states. This is Connecticut, right next to New York. In the World Trade Center attack, their names involved with the World Trade Center, with investigations. Investigators that have been used remotely since founding as victims, but as a certain kind of victim predator that everyone stays distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, including the opinions / convictions of everyone, with that mass insidiousness and uses of it having been in play. Originally still, religion, Phil, betrayal, tribes, religion, religion, legion. The Republic lost its campus, course, and way and soul. As legion, species, body, gang, will reconnect, and then we'll roll. So these are not means that we could, like that, we could make that across the globe paradise, like that. People want to speak about countering the environment without using nature, because they simultaneously are doing it in ways and with fact treatment, as natures that can't defend that and afford the quality of fact treatment nature necessary to overcome the tactically denatured identity grounds, identity of relationship to itself, for better than free, better than free. See, they can't afford their narratives by job, what's employed, who's employed, what they call legislation, what we're doing legislation programs. They're a certain kind of victim, pseudo sophistication, just like the overt criminal enterprises. There are styles of logic that are reliant upon the same premises treatment, like pretending democracy means what it doesn't. So follow mandated law for New York City, and let's get going. Let's get a response for the. If they want to deny it, tell me who denies it. For the Hartford courts and from the Britain Superior Court and from the Middletown courts. Tell me that person's name, and get me response for the people involved with this Dr. Graham and this Bob Chase with the state of Connecticut forensics locations. Also involved with Joshua Julian, Joshua Stryker with the FBI criminally involved here. Through time with that forensics location with state police, uses of their family members, their houses, their neighbors, their doctors, them sending them for mental health evaluations. They have Hartford Hospital involved with some sick fake punks, involved with women trying to threaten other women, mothers and stuff like that on the street and stuff like that. It's got something. It was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the slanders and frauds on and off the campuses connected against themselves and against me, sickly distinctly. They used that girl from Trinity College, from Central Connecticut State University. I don't know why they moved. I think she loved that house too, on Griswold Street. In other words, the corner of Griswold Street and Fairlane Drive is one of the places, and the corner that was also brought up by the people at Trinity College. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with people at UPS and with the post office and locations next to the post office as people involved with next to the schools. 8 schools I went to. I went to 9 schools, but 8 of the schools I went to have places next to them. And our places on and off them recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved tied to allusions and uses of my names, uses of statements made to me by people like that at other locations too, and their family members that were timed roles with uses of predicate acts at the time and through time on campuses, including I caught them. So there are people further with a woman, I don't know her name, with the name. She said her name. They said her name was Pierce. And there was another woman, Dr. Saunders. I have a conversation, never met a Dr. Saunders either. But she's one of the ones recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved intercities with cliques involved with drugs and medicines crimes with little kids and with each age of fact treatment nature. Also, the police firms that pretending to they try to go after the adults, and they're really just sticking into the kids that are the they're hiding the adults' roles with the youngest kids with the various natures of drugs, and then they're making who die who they want, and they're making who they need to pretend to does drugs who they want, and no one's looking in those databases. You have some sick fake punks associated with the databases with the narratives behind addiction and things like that. Then they get their patients and criminals kept needing to hide the same sequences with them, need to pretend passions, emotions tied to that, leaving out the exceptions. Red, boxing is sad, or a song. How you doing, people? Boxings, the martial arts, boxing, the martial arts, and wrestling share an identity, and they go by the rules. So since founding, America has needed to fight where we are fact human nature. But instead, we have identity theft, fraud, slander by the breaching method roles here and in the countries entrenched here and there together, fake sides. They would rather admit them that themselves. We have to give them means to our leaders, our so-called leaders, our so-called um, free-speaking overt criminal enterprises members, private ones, our so-called politicians, our so-called judges. Justice. Who spoke for justice? No one spoke for justice. And on time. Make sure you guys say sorry to Judge Napolitano because of uses of the Facebook pages of Fox Connecticut News and of his person with the wire crimes. Note that two Mendes police and the neighbors of Till. I don't know where the Mendes police live. The neighbors of the Domain family. I don't know where they live or where they used to live. Also involved with the police chief, Cintron, and one years ago. And I don't know, the new ones involved with the state police too. And the Marines. There are the Marines. There's one that was recorded dishonorably, that was reportedly dishonorably discharged from the Marines. Jerry Kerr. He's also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with Officer Jerry Miller with digital crimes with little boys and girls, with drugs, and with Facebook, where they say fake things on Facebook, and rolls with New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page is involved with sexual, medical, judicial, and medicines, drugs, crimes with little girls, and with overt criminal enterprises with the same names involved, and with private ones, and with their uses of union locations, sense and sensibilities by that. I'm a Teamster. UPS, you're involved with some people with child abusers with the name on the registry involved on off campuses through time with an Oliveri family too, who has roles with teachers in classes I had with people with the connections between people that lied to those teachers behind my back, teachers I never had personal conversation with. All exception nature and demonstration of the same thing. See, there were people planting evidences on campuses and off campuses through time. These are even the interbranch and military roles with breaking into houses and uses of that. Their roles with, interstates, intercities manifest stuff. I tell it best. Boxings. So wrestling is mostly grappling, and they're striking a little bit. Martial arts is part grappling, part striking, and boxing is mostly striking, but it's part grappling. For example, the identity, the sciences share. The sciences also share the sciences individually grouped and together bound. And where and how we need to fight as fact human nature. There is one way to do it that everyone wins, even when they lose, because it's really being led by what really trying to cause, what really causes, and really trying to be what causes positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And it is either way, it is not debatable, but without expressing demonstrated self-value different ways, criminally foreign influences, that for people, in other words, the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, they can't be addressed properly unless we do it this way. In other words, people can't deny that we have means way beyond this for free. People who want to say, oh, but that's not equal. That's the people, in other words, they get away with that as certain kind of victims of this at locations People are victims of this locations. All. Then further, database relationships relative to that. Then further, intersciences relative to uses of that, which is further simultaneously further database relationships, which is further means, needs, natures, motivations, need, interests, timing treatment, sequence treatments that increasingly can't value that and afford discern what sets that up per uses of it, per uses of all locations. Not just to say, oh, we're using it for, well, let's make the list for bad businesses. No, for uses of what no one discerned, for uses of all that is actually manifest here, with all that is overtly slash insidiously, not science with honest integrity and pretending others simultaneously. So we have to have a quality of fact treatment nature that is allowed the time. Doesn't take a, it takes a little bit more time. You tell the news media, please fix the fake words you attach me to. If you try to tell them over the phone, the agencies and the courts collude with them and with the military, because the military is also criminally foreign influence with other countries' militaries into leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. These are also people. No, they have in other words, and one of the people involved with the locations that doesn't realize that he brought that into it. Like what kind of a little punk kid or a man especially would pretend to know another man and bring a girl's name into it? See, there's a certain kind of little fake men that are interbranch made with this with the what's his name now? Abate, Dominic Abate. He's involved with identity thefts and frauds. He brought up some girl to me on Facebook. He's one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There are judges, prosecutors, and their families criminally involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and people with the pattern of roles and confessions tied to that. And then pretending that's not recorded when they know it's recorded various ways, because they've been pretending other in cases. They've been fabricating audio and video in courts every day. They've been justifying their own logic. They can't. So that's why they can't afford to have the rules followed timely, because they want to keep people coming to before their courts where they already exploited the rules they were told to follow. Like people are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. They also have collusion with the people who drafted the Patriot Act and with the dumb, pretended intelligent, stupid nerds behind the Patriot Act and behind uses of the identity of the FBI and their uses of legal treatment. They have collusion with what is on off each of these campuses sickly distinctly. They also have uses of the family members and the person of a homeschooled family involved also, even if it was undercover. That those people are involved with their patients and criminals. So they force people to a location so they can attach them to fake ties to themselves because they painted themselves doing so in real life behind our back. So we have no means to counter it. I keep finding out more stuff. So make sure I get a response on paper, and make sure I get a name to respond for me. It was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed too. More confessions by a Darren regarding the principal sex offenders campus and regarding the various natures of courts, criminal involvements. Also, New Britain Superior Court has a whole bunch of people with East Hartford involved with various natures of child abuse. Same ones are involved on and off the elderly homes, and with this Dominic Abate involved with at that corner. And everyone calling Nancy Pelosi and then calling Trump and calling Obama names. Part of it, there's no, It's everyone's faking the and when they call the names, they're not really willing to back it up. In other words, if someone said, "Oh, the presidents, forget them. They don't care about Native American rights." Good. That's right. They don't. That's right. But you don't. But you have to. But what do you blame it on? Them or the breaching method? Them or the locations, areas, and states? Or you try to figure out the mixture and uses of it. That's what you're supposed to do. See, they want and need passions and emotions about all that, therefore that. That's it. You call that person follow mandated law on time before you can think like that. Pretend you have the integrity to think like that. So we're gonna we can start stacking means with we have untapped industries. Hyper news is an untapped industry. We just don't attach theories to it. We report sequence shifts. We report all the ways it is recorded, demonstrated, confirmed, how all private tied to the interbranch in themselves and the exception nature that are supposed to be represent them as extensions of themselves in demonstration the company need to hide the same things with their family members too because of the uses of the locations. So before I have to keep using more people's names, because you guys brought these people's names up when I was a kid, but then you brought them up recently, and I still haven't had a response for the police confessions regarding the wire crimes and the faked their uses of Facebook pages of the campuses for sexually natured crimes and that are simultaneously juxtaposed medical and judicial crimes and medicines crimes and other natures of incompetence and degenerate pretending other roles and uses of that. And they have people on the Board of Education who had my name used to them years ago, real quick. I was in front of them. I never had anything to do with them. All exception, nature, and demonstration of the same thing. Also involved with where and how they were using. They were involved with predicate acts against my family and against businesses like real estate. They've been using the right to lie and the right to influence people to do bad things, vaccines. So fix you. Get me heard. I mean, tell me who's denying what I said, and fix the fake news of NBC Connecticut News. Let's go. I have you means here in New York City. I'll show you people involved with post-dated documents from inside the Ninth Circuit Court. They're fabricating evidences right before the World Trade Center attack. The same names colluded foreign were recorded personally how criminally foreign influence, but also colluded then since with former director also of the FBI too in his defendant capacities and family members and neighbors of his co-defendants, neighbors of a John not John LaConch. John LaConch is one of the ones with his daughters involved with predicate acts at Trinity College and at CCSU with identity theft, frauds through time connected. Then they pretended, well, why is this person bringing up the past? I don't know you in the past. You try to make an exception to pretend other. And that's relevant to the people that brought up these issues where I still haven't had a response for the confessions from the principal child abuser who's in jail, so he can't respond to me too. So make sure I get a response for the principal child abuser campus because they told the people to lie about what they tell the people and to say they don't understand what the kids say. They start fights between family members about different things so they could ask questions about that because they attach the kids and their family members to fake words and questions about things before that. Then if investigators try to investigate that, they say, yeah, they spoke about, but they still never spoke about anything, using lies as truth and getting people tricked to say it because people was attached to fake words. They attached people from New Britain courts and Hartford courts and people associated with them personally with medical locations, fire locations, and campuses, employments. They attach me and other people in my families to fake words about legal cases. They lied about the outcomes of legal cases with the news media because the FBI got caught also with what I caught them doing with the locations next to the news media locations. So make sure I get a response. See Renaissance, boxings, see neuroscience. I teach you things, but long. Boxing, because the campus, my Republic's campus calls you now, each now home. For so then to be known, Campus Marcias / Campus Marcias. Its value, where value is nature / nature as value. Republic's campus, long. Boxing is strong, but give it rest. Give us rest. I tell it best. Ye, awake, here. You guys, New York City. Someone give me a response for New York City. Someone give me a response for Connecticut. Someone give me a name, sequence on time. So right through the pandemic, they've been using the pandemic too. You all kinds of medical corruption. Anthony Fauci and Surgeon General. So you guys are good people, and they make you do evil because they keep your nature sick. You guys can't see that you guys have physical delusions too, though, because you came through sick campuses regarding the involvements and your justifications of and your entertainment of the involvements of the physical delusions and the crime methods and predators you have with the mental health community and with their evidence perception, data reception, racketeering. Even medical evidence is racketeering. Identity theft, fraud, slander roles. You guys sequence shift predators, wire crime acts, methods, natures. Then you're going to speak for you want you got to. We have all the money we need. We got to charge these people privately. If you get me a response for Hartford Hospital and for the other ones that brought themselves involved. There's also a detective Samuda, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved in identity theft, fraud, slanders. And as people, as one of the male and female police involved with sexual abuses of little kids and women, medical, sexual, and on off their campuses through time. These are also the other police forms on off Central Connecticut State University, further with the F.B.I. criminally involved. You watch their souls. Look into the soul of that guy pretending to be against hate crimes with the commercial of the F.B.I. in Connecticut, and you fear God for trying to fear the FBI because they have nothing. They are nothing worth fearing or loving. They're non-existent. Where and how we needed them to be existing as legal nature. We don't have representation. Nations each, we're in a breach. So make sure I get a response so I don't have to keep asking for names and describing the locations and people brought up because they attached me to fake ties to other people when I was in grammar school. And that was brought up by the people in the news, by their fake news, fake words with me, and with the people from the courts. And the police grouped them together distinctly, though. So they switched names as groups. They together. They fabricate audio and video every day in those courts. They have some sick methods with the torture that is additional to the slavery roles they have involved here. And then pretending passions and emotions with contrast. Oh, you think that's slavery? You sick souls. We're going to heal you here. You're going to repent too. You're going to say sorry to the American people and to the people of Connecticut. And someone get the University of Maine, because there is a girl from the University of Maine involved with the men and women involved with the intelligence community in East Hartford, and with the ones involved with overt criminal enterprises and people with airports and a whole bunch of different ways through time, as the ones on off the campuses and along the routes. And that corner of Route 3 and Elm Street involved criminally with New Britain, that's involved with Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, and that's in Rocky Hill, but that goes by the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices, which is also involved with the names. And they're homeless with their homes, and people live next to them involved with sequence shifts, identity theft, frauds. because these are the intelligence community has a raise of people that know each other, but they're all criminally foreign influenced. They're all delusions, raw identity theft, fraud, slanders roles that pretend to know people through time. Then they all pretend from the different ways together, but each one of those people only knows me about locations they can't be honest about, because I never made responses to people in relationship to their statements to me that were also confessions, you know. And people don't like that when you per the where and how what is actually recorded relevant to the child abuses is where and how recorded was, where and how the evidence reception is involved, where they already did that with racketeering and worse. They already have the high lie progressions and how they have their kids employed by the men and women that raised like this Sully Bajario. He's one of the little punk weirdos. I never had he recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He wanted to ask me to if I wanted to buy a quote for him for $20. I only said yes because it was evidence. He was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with courts and police forms that are criminally foreign influenced, relevant to where and how I needed to speak about that because he's also involved with the families like of the mayor and of the like an O'Brien police forms family that prevented me offensively from describing properly how there are revelations by just admitting that and how no honesty spoke for Native Americans, sickly distinctly from how no honesty spoke for the colonists, sickly distinctly for no relevant to how no honesty speaks for us. So, in other words, boxing, I teach you things. We gotta respond where and how. Instead of letting the dirty cops and the dirty courts speak for you guys in the locations and everyone else. Follow mandated law here, I'll show you with fact, human nature alone will discipline their souls. Those you want and need someone to speak hard for you, New York City, Connecticut cities. Let's go. New Haven. Let's go. Who will say that? Let's go. That means tell your state and your country to follow mandated law. Get them on paper now. Those judges, the prosecutors. Nothing personal against them. I'm going to show you how everyone, even them, was attached to fake words. They've been exploiting every single person, sickly distinctly, but they've been self-valuing because they could discern that and how statutes are criminally foreign influence have been precedences. Because they're shock and awe relevant to where and how they could counter that. It's the same reason and way we have to understand how our founders wanted us to understand how the Constitution is supposed to be defended unabridged. More importantly than understanding which statute means what. That's obfuscated. They want us to understand that too. Vaccines come through. Someone to be real for your country. Since before the World Trade Center attack, I'm not making this up. Don't be afraid of the FBI. Make them fear, because they should. If they're doing their job right, they have to realize they couldn't speak for the law, the nature of the law, and they already spoke. They should fear God. When we use God in this pantheism / hyperpantheism science method, there's a means to check whoever says it, individually grouped and together, if they're saying it right. In other words, we go by what really is going to cause positive value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures. Air. The means appear. Vaccines. Anthony Wall at youtube.com/user/Romulus Wall. ROMULUS. So it's youtube.com/user/ROMULUS WALL. YouTube.com/user/Romulus Wall. Will heal you all. Vaccines. It teaches things to know. Sometimes the rain will fall from skies. Sometimes it will snow. Sometimes it will neither, though. So, people of New York, people of Newark, New Jersey, how you doing, New Jersey? Connecticut, New York City, more World Trade Center attack. Predicate acts of other natures, but that had been employed, roles used remotely, were all recorded. The news media is recorded communicating. They're pretending other, but they're pretending that they're legitimately maintaining the differences of the parties relevant to each other. But they're needing to do that because the parties are with themselves as fact human natures and fact human nature qualities and aspects, as locations, areas, and states' voices, as science's voices, still criminally foreign influenced, effectively, tactically criminally foreign influence uses of tactically criminally foreign influence premises, treatments, fact human nature qualities, fact human nature itself as criminal insidious nature, and as a hypercriminal insidious nature that is juxtaposed with all the arrays of criminal insidious natures of positive and negative treatments, and with theater takes again. When people make positive and negative treatments about New York City, if they're saying that science with integrity spoke for it, science is with integrity spoke for it, honestly, together. They're with delusions. They are with criminally foreign influence, fact human nature qualities that become evidence. That's why we have to have mandated law fall outside of courts. But the police forums can't afford this. Did you see CNN's, take on New Year's? They're involved with sexual harassment, and with the sequence shifts, with the sexual communities involved with the interbranch, with their roles with sexual and medical and judicial crimes with the kids, and with our names, with their evidence racketeering, evidence reception racketeering. My town's principal 1 years ago involved with the house, involved with this, but it's through other natures of organized crime. But it's also further with the principal's child offenders campus at the time, and there are sexually natured abuses of themselves when they were growing up, and means and ways they expressed it to me and other. They also are demonstrating how they were employed, needing to self-value. The real cause of negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures, being and having been blamed on other things, others, and ourselves, by themselves and by others, rather than having someone just clear up all the stupid physical delusions and lies illusions, especially the ones that are criminally foreign influenced, that are in the way, and that are in collusion with you, because they have remote uses of the sensibilities of everyone, where and how they hear things about people before they see them, right before they see them. And everyone's lied to about what came before that, and there's no means to stop that because of how they have it with a method on and off the campus is connected. The only way to stop it is to follow mandated law. When someone like me asks you to follow mandated law, you don't make allegations with us. See, the interbranch has been making allegations with people so long that now they just tell people to do that. They have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes, and they pretend, you either have to blame the Facebook, you have to blame YouTube, or you have to blame, the police. The police and the overt criminal enterprise is, and people next to the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso, and the people next to the body dumping spot of a serial killer, and that serial killer are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, having been brought into identity theft, frauds, and slanders, and forced roles, self-valuing physical delusions too, with their patients and criminals. I mean, with their doctors too. So there's a Dr. Graham who's recorded involved with federal crimes with a principal sex offender, and with drugs and medicines crimes with children, with a Bob Chase, and Bob Chase said that Phil Collusion was one of the ones involved with a falsified police report with him. I didn't get to read it. Make sure I get a response for any of them. You know, the exception nature tied to the interbranch in the interbranch. In other words, so there are further people then and now involved with digital crimes, sexual, with the upskirt nature principals campus, and with the other campuses as the people involved, because they have the policing of the campuses involved. They also have them involved with drugs crimes, where they know that apparently because they have like other countries' police forms involved with it, and they have the different types of drugs involved with their narratives. Like, so people on my street and Chris Walters said that a Charlie Bowes is also one of the ones. I never had anything to do with Charlie Bowes, his sister in my life. Never saw her around in my life. She pretended other with it with an Eric with Chris Walters, and with the neighbors on my street involved with the ones from the Wethersfield Police Department, with the families with the Wethersfield Police Department, and with the shopping centers and uses of the locations like the corner of was it Church Street or Elm Street in Rocky Hill? It was Elm Street and Route 3 is involved with this. It has something to do with their roles with the locations next to the state judicial branch offices, where they time sequence shifts and identity thefts and frauds roles. Like, for example, I never saw Maria Fazina on my campus, any campus I ever went to, except for Central Connecticut State University. I never had anything to do with her boyfriends and her husband involved with falsified police reports with people next to the state, with the people associated with the state judicial branch offices, and with Wethersfield Police, and with Intercities Police on off Central Connecticut State University, too, in New Britain, Intercities connected, and on off other campuses. Mark Violet said it confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed also with others that there were Bryan families involved with them with that on off the locations next to the state capitol. Those buildings where they have clubs, different owners and stuff through time. And their neighbors are involved criminally. All kinds of falsified police reports, identity thefts, fraud, slanders that are through time connected to. They are kept, need to hide lie progressions, where they are kept used remotely. So you're going to examine remotely used cases, remotely used depositions, remotely used arrests, remotely used locations, and then further remote uses of all this that everyone missed. Lefis, please get me a response. See Renaissance, Boxings. I will teach you things and long. So they've been pretending passion and emotions regarding the significance of economic variables and of their expertise on economic variables, where and how they've left out exceptions and exception nature to where and how the economy never had rights. That it pretends it needs to pretend it has when they are speaking for such. The only reason they get away with that is because of how they have the forced words on our founding parents that they demonstrate us. They want us to tell about how they were forced words and forced entertained natures of positive and negative treatments that they didn't want entertained, because then you can't defend the Constitution We have needs to use to keep calm and to raise our voices that are other than people value when they're valuing our volume as a value progression humanity in a negative value nature progression. See, they set up means to cause positive value nature progressions that were employed by the breaching method. There is the phenomenon of them being and having been counter employed by our founders, but they left us to liberate ourselves from that by being a quality of fact, human nature to do it or to have lost. And you can't measure victory with that with economics. They'll take away your money in 1 second when they keep playing this out, because individually grouped and together, they can't defend themselves, the identities of nations, and they have too many needs to simultaneously forced by nature. While they are natures holding nuclear weapons, no. I self-promote. Auto crater. Getting greater. Bach sings in a song. Bach sings or says. Or not. Now I'll get hot. Let's go. Give me a name, someone. Make sure everyone say, get him a name, get him a name, get him a name. And while I'll show you how to counter what happened in the World Trade Center attack and how to make sure it never happens again. Make sure you guys respond for the FBI with that sick fake punk treatments of pretending they have integrity too, and their wire crime games with these pretending they can counter hate crimes. You sequence shifting predators. You're gonna be revealed as that. Don't stay that way, so I don't have to treat you like that. Because I'm gonna treat you like that. I'm gonna end you here. Fake branches fall to find the seed. Attend. Here all 10, please read. The rest proceed. Yes.